Most of us, we live by the clock, right? Deadlines, appointments, endless to-do lists. But what if it's just making us run faster, but in the completely wrong direction? Well, today we're going to break down a huge idea from Stephen Covey's First Things First. We're going to see how to escape what he calls the tyranny of the clock and actually start living a more meaningful, more effective life.
Just let that sink in for a second. I mean, think about it. You're busy, you feel productive, you're checking off all the boxes on your list, but don't you get that nagging feeling sometimes? That little voice inside that says something is off? That all this effort, all this climbing, might be leading you somewhere you never even wanted to go in the first place. And see, that right there is the fundamental shift we're exploring today. For decades, time management has been all about efficiency, hasn't it? Just cramming more and more into every single hour. But this is about effectiveness. It's about making sure your hours are actually spent on what truly, deeply matters to you. Okay, so this brings us to the core metaphor of this whole thing, the clock. That's what we all know, right? It's our schedules, our appointments, our deadlines. It's how we manage our time. But the compass? Well, that's something different. The compass is our values, our vision, our principles. It's that deep down gut feeling of what's truly important. And here's the kicker, the real problem. For most of us, there's a massive gap between our clock and our compass.
All right, so let's dig into that gap a little more. Because let's be real, we're all caught in this busyness trap. We have this belief that if we could just do more and do it faster, we'd finally feel in control, we'd feel fulfilled. But what if that's a complete and total myth?
I mean, does this sound familiar to you? This quote from the book just captures that feeling perfectly. You're putting in a ton of work, you fall into bed completely exhausted, but you're just left wondering, so what? What does any of this really count for? It's the absolute classic sign of winning the battle, but losing the war. You see, that so what feeling, it comes directly from that gap we were talking about. The things we're actually doing day to day, all the stuff filling up our clock, they just don't line up with our deepest values, with our inner compass. And here's the hard truth. No amount of extra efficiency is ever going to fix that fundamental disconnect. No way.
So this brings up a really critical question, doesn't it? I mean, if we're all using planners and calendars and all these fancy apps, why does this gap still exist? Well, maybe the problem isn't us. Maybe, just maybe, it's the tools we're using. So Covey breaks this down really well. He talks about 3 generations of time management. First gen, that was just simple to-do lists, right? Just trying to keep track of everything. Second gen brought us calendars, letting us plan ahead. And the third generation, which is where most of our modern apps are, is all about prioritizing those lists and setting goals. Now, each step definitely made us more efficient, but they all share the exact same fundamental flaw.
And this is it. This is the flaw. All 3 of those generations were absolutely obsessed with the clock. They were just about building better, faster, more efficient ways to manage our time. But they completely, totally ignored the compass. The actual direction we're headed in. They helped us do things right, but they never once stopped to ask if we were doing the right things.
So here's the crucial takeaway. Being more efficient at the wrong things is like putting a rocket engine on a car that's pointed at a cliff. It just gets you to the wrong destination faster. What we need isn't another new app or a fancier planner. We need a whole new way of thinking, one that starts with our compass, first and foremost. Okay, so if the old tools aren't the answer, then what's really holding us back? What is it that keeps us so focused on the clock instead of the compass? Well, it turns out there's this powerful, almost hidden force at play, and it's our addiction to urgency. And hey, let's be honest with ourselves for a minute. Handling a crisis feels kind of good, doesn't it? It's exhilarating. You get that adrenaline rush, you feel validated, important, useful. But that's the problem. We get hooked on that feeling. We start almost subconsciously seeking out the urgent stuff because it gives us this immediate temporary high, even when it comes at the expense of what's actually truly important. This quote it nails it. Think about it. The urgent is loud. It's demanding. It's screaming right in our face. But the important? That's often quiet. It requires thought, foresight, and patience. And in that constant battle for our attention, guess who usually wins? The tyrant of urgency, devouring our time and our energy. Okay, so we've definitely diagnosed the problem. We're trapped by our clocks, we're addicted to urgency. So what's the cure? What's the way out? Well, it's not a new tool. It's a whole new map for our lives. And that's really the key right there. A map doesn't just tell you what time it is, like a clock does. A map shows you where you are, where you want to go, and all the possible paths to get there. It gives you context, it gives you perspective. The tool we need isn't another clock. It's a map. And here it is. This is that map. It's called the Time Management Matrix, and it organizes literally everything we do based on just two simple criteria. Is it urgent and is it important? This simple little grid, this is the key to breaking our addiction to the clock and finally putting first things first.
All right, let's break this down real quick. Quadrant I is for things that are both important and urgent. Think crises, deadlines. We have to manage these. Then you have Quadrant 3. This is the big trap. It's urgent, but it's not important. It's the quadrant of deception because the urgency tricks us into thinking it matters. We've got to avoid this one. Quadrant 4, that's just waste. Not urgent, not important. We limit that as much as possible. But the real magic, the secret sauce, happens in Quadrant 2. Things that are important, but not urgent. This is the quadrant of quality. This is where planning, prevention, and real personal development live. And this is where we have to choose to focus our energy.
So I want you to pause for a second and really honestly think about this. Not a whole list of things, just one. What is the one activity that if you did it consistently would dramatically improve your personal life, your well-being, your relationships, your happiness? Okay, got it? Now do the exact same thing for your work. What is that single activity that if you did it consistently would produce absolutely massive results in your career or your business? Just take a second and really think about it.
And there it is. I'm willing to bet whatever you came up with for both of those questions, it's in Quadrant 2. Whether it's exercising or planning out your week or really investing time in a relationship or learning a new skill, the most impactful things in our lives are almost always Quadrant 2 activities. They are incredibly important, but because they aren't screaming for our attention, they're the very first things we push aside the second we get busy.
So this is the final piece of the puzzle, right? How do we actually do this? How do we make the shift? How do we stop living in this state of constant reaction and start proactively, consciously choosing to live in Quadrant 2? And the answer, the practical advice on how to get the time, is actually surprisingly simple. You don't get more time for Quadrant 2 by cutting back on sleep or rest. That's not the answer. You find the time by learning to say no to Quadrant 3. By saying no to all those unimportant interruptions and other people's priorities that feel urgent but actually contribute nothing to your own compass, to your own goals. So what does that Quadrant 2 life actually look like in practice? Well, it looks like this. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. It's things like preparing properly for meetings, having those deep conversations you've been meaning to have, taking care of your physical and mental health, and empowering the people around you. These are the kinds of activities that don't just put out fires. They prevent the fires from ever starting in the first place, and they build a solid foundation for long-term success and real fulfillment. So I'm going to leave you with this one last question. Based on everything we've talked about today, what is that one Quadrant 2 activity for you? You know the one, that important, game-changing thing you've been telling yourself you'll get to one day. The real question is, what's stopping you from making it a priority starting today?